Ready for humanity to rise? Hit like, comment. If you want more HFY, and subscribe now. Don't miss the epic action ahead. Let's dive in. This is going to be legendary. The Zorthian Empire had never seen a defeat, not in their 1,000-year reign. Their vast fleets, incomprehensible technology, and ironclad control over the galaxy were unchallenged. Humanity, a mere speck in their eyes, had long been crushed under their heel. But this was different. Across the galaxy, the transmission was live. The execution of a human prisoner, broadcast to every corner of the known universe. Every Zorthian commander, officer, and citizen tuned in, basking in the spectacle of what they believed to be the final blow to human resistance. The camera zoomed in on the young girl, barely out of her teens, shackled and bruised, standing defiantly. In the heart of the Zorthian capital, her name was Kayla Rowe, and in her eyes was the fire of 1,000 warriors. This wasn't just an execution, it was the Empire's message. "Humanity has no place in the stars," the Zorthian officer said, his voice booming across the broadcast, cold as the void itself. "Your rebellion ends here." But there was something in the air, a sense of unease no one could place. Kayla stood tall, her head high, and the Zorthian soldiers surrounding her shuffled nervously. The moment of death had come. They'd seen it before, countless times. The girl would break. They always broke. The officer raised his hand, signaling the execution. "Fire!" he barked. But just before the shot rang out, Kayla did something unexpected. Her lips parted, whispering words that would be lost in the noise of the gunfire. "Not today." A beat. Then, a crackling across the galaxy, the faintest of signals, a pulse, barely detectable, whispered from a hidden network, reaching the right ears at the right moment. The transmission, the execution, it was all part of a trap. Not for the Empire's victims, but for the Empire itself. Just as the officer's finger tightened on the trigger, something unexpected happened. The broadcast went static. The shot missed, tearing into the ground beside her. The girl was alive. For one moment, confusion swept across the Zorthian commanders' faces. It was impossible. The technology they controlled was flawless. They couldn't have made a mistake. The signal was already propagating, millions of human eyes now burning with the fire of rebellion. Kayla had just sent a message across every channel in the galaxy. The signal wasn't a call for rescue. It was a signal for something far worse. Inside the command center of the Zorthian High Command, the alarms began to blare. Communications were down. Fleet coordinates scrambled. The Zorthian officers exchanged frantic glances. The Empire's entire defense network was compromised, not by brute force, not by overwhelming numbers, but by something far more dangerous: human ingenuity. Kayla stood there, staring into the eyes of the officer. She knew the execution wasn't the end. It was the beginning. As she raised her voice, clear and defiant, the broadcast cut back to the galaxy at large. "You think you can break us?" she spat, blood dripping from her lips. "This is where your empire ends." The room froze. In the streets of Zorthian worlds, in the hidden corners of the resistance, humanity listened, a spark igniting across the stars. It had started with a girl. One girl who refused to break. As the broadcast ended, a new transmission was received. It was the last thing the Zorthian Empire would ever hear. A single sentence, clear as day, broadcasted across all frequencies. "The Empire will fall. Humanity rises. The rebellion strikes." The galaxy was still reeling from the broadcast. Across countless planets and in the hearts of human colonies, something had changed. The Empire had made a mistake. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive. The Zorthian Empire believed that by publicly executing one human girl, they would extinguish the last embers of rebellion. But in truth, they had done the opposite. Kayla Rowe's words had echoed through the minds of every rebel fighter, every oppressed human, sparking a fire that burned brighter than the Empire ever imagined. And now, that fire was spreading. Vash. Cormac stood in the cockpit of a stolen Zorthian warship, staring at the holographic map of the star system. The Empire's countermeasures had scrambled their communications, but Vash had expected that. They weren't going to make it easy, but humans didn't win wars by playing by the rules. They played by their own. Vash's hand hovered over the controls, fingers twitching. The ship, a sleek, deadly thing once used to patrol the borders of Zorthian space, now belonged to the Resistance. He didn't know how they had gotten it, only that it had come into their hands at the right moment. The timing had been flawless, and now the human resistance was about to send a message. "We're clear to proceed," Vash muttered to his crew, a ragtag team of soldiers, hackers, and engineers who had come together in the face of the Empire's brutality. "Once we hit their main fleet's coordinates, the trap will be set. Let's make them regret this." The crew nodded, tense but resolute. Vash's plan was simple: strike fast, strike hard, and vanish before the Empire could react. They were going to hit one of the Empire's largest supply convoys and leave them blind. The ship slipped out of hyperspace into the heart of a Zorthian-controlled system, just behind a moon that blocked their sensors. They were in enemy territory now, and the Zorthian fleet was out there, more than a dozen ships waiting for supply deliveries. But they wouldn't see them coming. Lieutenant Kala Denovi crouched in the shadows of a darkened alley on Gathar 7, one of the last human strongholds that had yet to fall under the Empire's rule. Her hand clutched the pulse rifle, her breath shallow but steady. She wasn't alone. Around her, a dozen more rebels were getting into position. "We're a go, Lieutenant," whispered one of the operatives, his voice barely audible under the sound of distant airships. "Empire's on the move." "Good. We're taking the fight to them," Kala said, her tone cold and focused. She could already hear the hum of Zorthian war machines patrolling the streets. "Hold your fire until the signal hits. I need them distracted." The plan was bold, almost insane, but that was the point. It wasn't about brute force. It was about creating chaos, disarray, human ingenuity. Kala and her squad had intercepted a fleet transmission, learning the exact location of a Zorthian convoy transporting high-grade fuel and weapons for their warships. The convoy was expected to pass through the city's outskirts in 20 minutes. But here's the kicker. The convoy wasn't the real target. The real target was the Zorthians' pride. Kala was going to make sure the Empire knew exactly who was messing with them. Back in space, Vash's team had just launched a series of EMP charges onto the supply convoy's main transport hub. Within moments, the lead ships went dark. The plan was working. Too well, maybe. The Zorthian fleet scrambled to respond, but by the time they realized the attack wasn't just a raid, but a full-scale trap, it was too late. A Zorthian officer barked into the comms, his voice panicked. "They're hacking our systems. We've been infiltrated. Get the fleet back into formation, now!" But the rebels didn't wait for them to get organized. Vash's voice crackled over the comms. "All right, team, we're out of here. Initiate the exit protocol. Let's disappear before they can recalibrate." The Zorthians, for all their technology and superior firepower, had just been blindsided. Vash had used their own arrogance against them. He knew they would never expect a small resistance ship to penetrate their deepest defenses, and that underestimating humanity's ability to adapt was something that no empire could afford. Kala watched as the first explosion rocked the convoy from afar, her pulse racing. The hum of Zorthian engines filled the air as soldiers scrambled in every direction, some running for cover, others trying to counterattack. They had fallen right into her trap. She fired a signal flare into the night sky, a blinding white light that illuminated the dark streets for a moment. The explosion on the convoy's main transport had triggered an automatic alarm, sending Zorthian forces into disarray. They had just given her the distraction she needed. "Move out," she ordered. The rebels surged forward, cutting down a handful of Zorthian patrols with precise, surgical shots. They weren't fighting an army. They were exploiting weaknesses. Humanity wasn't better equipped than the Empire, but they were faster, smarter, and more willing to take risks. As the convoy exploded into flames, human fighters stormed the Zorthian-controlled gates, freeing civilians and sabotaging key infrastructure along the way. But amidst the chaos, Commander Draxon, the Zorthian fleet commander, stood in his command center, looking at the screen that was flashing red. His hands were clenched into fists. A human force had infiltrated their territory, again, and it was working. "We underestimated them," he muttered under his breath. His second-in-command, an alien with jagged purple skin, stared at the data. "What now, Commander?" "They've taken control of the supply lines." Draxon's jaw tightened. "They've taken control of nothing. We'll crush them all. Prepare the fleet. We're deploying everything." But it was too late. The Zorthian Empire's pride had blinded them once again. The first wave of rebellion was just the beginning. As Draxon's fleet prepared for a counterattack, a rogue signal popped up on his command screen. A message, a single line of text. "The war has only just begun." The Zorthian counterattack. The Zorthian Empire did not take kindly to being humiliated. A single human girl's defiance had sparked a rebellion that was now taking root in every corner of their galaxy. And the Empire's response would be swift, brutal, and unyielding. Commander Draxon stood before the large hollow table in his flagship's command center, his eyes dark with fury. The human resistance had dealt them a blow to their pride and to their efficiency. The supply convoy was gone, the fleet crippled, and the human signal had rippled through their communications network like an electric shock. They had seen the humans strike quickly, exploiting every weakness, and Draxon knew there could be no more mistakes. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered, his voice low and cold. "We will eradicate them. No more skirmishes, no more distractions. It ends now." The officers around him exchanged uncertain glances, but none dared to question him. The Zorthians had spent millennia at the top of the galactic hierarchy. The idea that humans, mere insects in their eyes, could resist their overwhelming superiority was a concept they refused to entertain. The problem was that it wasn't just the humans. They were learning, adapting. And that was something the Zorthians could not predict. Meanwhile, in the heart of the human resistance, Vash Cormac sat in the control room of their new command ship, a repurposed Zorthian cruiser. The hum of the ship's engines seemed almost peaceful compared to the storm that was about to hit them. "You're sure about this, Vash?" Lieutenant Kaladinovi asked, her eyes locked onto the tactical display. "The Zorthians will retaliate with everything they have. We're not going to be able to outgun them." Vash gave a grim smile. "We don't need to outgun them. We need to outsmart them." He tapped a few commands into the console, bringing up an overlay of the Zorthian fleet's movements. The Empire's ships were circling like sharks, preparing to sweep across human-held territories. It was clear they were bringing everything to bear: warships, drones, even experimental weapons they had developed to crush any rebellion. But Vash wasn't worried. The key to survival wasn't brute force. It was misdirection. "Okay," he said, pointing to a cluster of planets on the map. "Here's the plan. We'll deploy our fleet in a series of feints. A few decoy signals, false targets, hit-and-run raids. Keep them guessing. We'll pull their focus away from where we need it." Kala raised an eyebrow. "And where do we need it?" Vash paused for a moment, studying the map. "Right here, in the heart of their defensive perimeter." On the Zorthian flagship, Commander Draxon barked orders. "We have the coordinates of their fleet. Prepare to engage. Deploy every ship in our arsenal. I want them wiped out in one decisive strike." But his words were met with a sudden, eerie silence. His second-in-command stepped forward, her brow furrowed in concern. "Commander," she said, her voice tense, "there's something wrong. The humans, they've vanished." "What do you mean, vanished?" Draxon snapped. "We've lost contact with several of our patrols. And our sensors—" She paused, her voice rising in disbelief. They've sent out false signals. Fake fleet signals, Commander. We're chasing shadows. Draxon's face hardened. He had expected human resistance. What he hadn't expected was this level of tactical brilliance. Send out our fleets on multiple intercept vectors. We're going to flush them out, and when we do, we crush them. His eyes narrowed with cold fury. And if any of those fools are hiding behind asteroids or moons, I'll personally carve them from the galaxy. Meanwhile, Vash and his team watched as the Zorthian fleet began to spread out, drawn into a web of decoy signals that had been seeded across their communication network. The humans had scattered their forces into small, agile ships, hiding in asteroid fields, jumping between planets, and staying just one step ahead of the Zorthian forces. Now, Vash said, his voice calm, let's give them something they'll never expect. He gave the signal, and the small fleet of human ships surged forward, engaging Zorthian patrols in a series of lightning-fast hit-and-run strikes. The Zorthians, unable to coordinate their massive fleet across such vast distances, were forced to fight in fragmented skirmishes. Their superior firepower wasn't enough to catch the elusive humans, but Vash's ultimate goal wasn't to fight. It was to buy time. On the Zorthian flagship, Draxon was losing his patience. His fleet was splintering. He could feel his command slipping away as the humans continued to outmaneuver him at every turn. They're mocking us, Draxon muttered. We're chasing them like fools. Commander, his second-in-command said, her voice shaking. We've located their main fleet. They've repositioned themselves right behind our most heavily fortified outpost. Draxon turned to face her, his eyes burning with rage. I knew it. They're using us to stretch ourselves thin. No matter. They'll regret. This. Send everything we have. We'll turn that rebel fleet into space debris. Back with the humans, Vash watched as the Zorthian forces continued to fracture, their overconfidence starting to show. The rebels' small fleet had slipped behind the Zorthian defensive lines, ready to make their move. Get ready, Vash said. This is it. We strike when they're at their weakest. Just as the Zorthian ships made their final push, something unexpected happened. One of the human ships, a decoy, exploded with a massive flare. It wasn't a real explosion. It was a pulse weapon, an experimental EMP blast designed to temporarily disable Zorthian electronics, and it worked. The Zorthian fleet's communications flickered out. Their ships froze in space, unable to relay orders or engage their weapons. Systems. For the first time, the Empire had lost control of the battlefield. And just when the Zorthians were about to scramble for answers, a voice echoed across the galaxy from the heart of the human resistance. This is humanity. Your empire is no more. The fall of an empire. The Zorthian Empire's grip on the galaxy had been shattered. Their mighty fleets, once invincible, now drifted in confusion, fractured and paralyzed. What had once been the dominant power in the cosmos was beginning to unravel at the seams. Commander Draxon paced furiously in his flagship's war room, the edges of his cloak trailing behind him like a dark storm cloud. His officers stood in silence, unsure of how to approach him. The ship's communications systems flickered in and out, further compounding the chaos. It had been hours since the EMP blast rendered the Zorthian fleet's tactical systems useless, and no matter what they did, they couldn't regain control. Get the damn systems back online, Draxon barked, his voice tinged with desperation. We cannot let these insignificant humans have the satisfaction of defeating us. His second-in-command, Arius, stepped forward. Commander, we have a problem. The humans aren't fighting us on their terms anymore. They're playing a game we don't understand. Draxon glared at him, his fist slamming onto the table. I know that, but I don't care what game they're playing. I will crush them, Arius. This ends now. Arius hesitated, his face grim. It may already be over. They've cut off all communications with the Inner Empire. Our supply routes are compromised, and our strategic command points have been isolated. We're fighting shadows. There's no central authority anymore. Draxon's eyes darkened. Then we will make them regret this. Send every ship we have to the capital now. If we can't win this battle, we'll crush them in the heart of their resistance. They'll never know what hit them. Back in the heart of the human resistance, Vash Cormac stood in the command room of their flagship, staring at the tactical displays. The Zorthian fleet was in disarray, scattering across the galaxy in a desperate attempt to regroup. But it was too late. The humans had already taken control of the most vital Zorthian supply hubs and strategic locations. The next move was crucial. It was time to strike at the heart of the Empire. But it wouldn't be easy. The capital world of the Zorthian Empire, Sci-Fi, was a fortress. It was their last stronghold, heavily protected and fortified beyond any imaginable defense. If humanity could take Sci-Fi, the war would be over. "We've got one shot at this," Vash said, his voice low, almost as if speaking to himself. "We can't afford to hesitate." Calla Denovi, standing by his side, nodded. "It's going to be a hell of a ride, Vash, but we're ready. Let's bring it to them." "We'll need every ounce of firepower we have left," Vash replied, his mind already working through the logistics. "The Zorthians will be expecting a direct assault. That's what they'll think we're doing. But we're going to hit them where they least expect it." "Feints? Misdirection?" Calla asked. "Exactly," Vash said, a faint smile crossing his face. "We'll split their forces, make them think we're attacking from multiple directions. Then we'll focus everything on their central command. Once we hit them there, we'll disable their last line of defense, and the capital is ours." Back on Sci-Fi, the Zorthian High Command watched in disbelief as their systems slowly began to recover. But the damage had been done. The human resistance was not only alive, it was thriving. And the Zorthians had no idea how to stop them. Empress Vera, ruler of the Zorthian Empire, stood at the head of the council, her eyes blazing with the fury of someone who had everything to lose. She had ruled with an iron fist, had crushed civilizations, and erased entire species with nothing more than the wave of a hand. Now, for the first time in centuries, the empire was on the brink of collapse. "Enough," she said coldly. "We will not fall to a pack of rebels. Prepare our final weapon. We will launch everything we have at them. This ends with the total destruction of the human resistance." Her military advisor, General Hakar, hesitated. "The humans have already infiltrated our capital systems, Your Majesty. If we launch all of our forces into a counterattack, we risk leaving the planet vulnerable." "Vulnerable?" Vera spat, her gaze like fire. "They have nothing left. We are the Empire. They will bend to us, or they will die." She turned to a nearby officer. "Prepare the Zithar-class dreadnought. If the humans want to come for Sci-Fi, we'll meet them head-on." Vash stood in front of the holographic projection, eyes locked onto the Zorthian capital. His mind was working overtime as he calculated every possible outcome of the coming battle. But even as the plan took shape, he couldn't help but feel the weight of what was at stake. "This is it, Calla," he said quietly. "If we fail here, it's over." She placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and resolute. "We won't fail. We've come too far." The plan was simple, but the stakes couldn't have been higher. Vash's fleet would attack from 3 different points, each designed to keep the Zorthians guessing. The real target, however, was their Zithar-class dreadnought, the final line of defense. Once that ship fell, the capital would be vulnerable to full-scale attack. "All hands, prepare for deployment," Vash ordered, his voice cutting through the tension. "This ends today." As the human fleet engaged, the battle began in earnest. The Zorthians, expecting a direct assault, found themselves drawn into a web of decoys and traps. The humans had learned from their mistakes. No longer would they rush into battle without preparation. Instead, they played a patient game of cat and mouse, picking apart the Zorthian forces one ship at a time. But the Zorthians were no slouches. They had anticipated an attack, just not one like this. General Hakar led a counteroffensive with unrelenting force, sending wave after wave of Zorthian ships into the fray. The humans were outgunned, but their tactics were far more cunning. They lured the Zorthians into tight formations, where their superior numbers became a liability. Explosions rocked the void as human ships darted in and out of the chaos, hitting vital targets before disappearing into the shadows of space. Amidst the battle, Vash's fleet finally breached the Zithar-class dreadnought's defenses. As the final blow was about to be struck, a message appeared on the command screen, chilling and direct. "You have made your final mistake. Prepare to be annihilated." The Zithar-class dreadnought's weapon systems powered up, and then the entire ship went dark. The last stand. The hum of the human fleet was deafening as it swarmed through the fractured remnants of the Zorthian Empire's defense lines. The Zithar-class dreadnought loomed ahead, its dark silhouette like the shadow of death itself. But just as the human fleet closed in, a sudden shockwave blasted through space, rattling every ship in the fleet. The Zithar had just powered up its weapons. Vash Cormac gripped the arms of his chair as the tremors shook their command ship. "What the hell just happened?" "Energy signature on the Zithar," shouted the tactical officer. "It's powering up its main cannons. If we don't do something, they'll wipe out our entire fleet." The tactical display showed the dreadnought's enormous cannons charging, a lethal energy gathering at the front of the massive ship. The sheer scale of it was intimidating. One shot could annihilate an entire fleet. No one had ever survived. A direct hit from a Zithar class. Damn it, Vash cursed, his mind racing. He knew the Zorthians wouldn't go down without a fight, but this was beyond anything they had anticipated. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Stay out of their firing range, now!" But it was already too late. The dreadnought unleashed its first volley of fire. The energy blast cut through space like a knife, a blinding beam of death that split the void itself. The first human ship caught the brunt of it, exploding in a shower of debris. Then another. Then another. "They're trying to take us down in one shot," Vash muttered, gritting his teeth. "We need to buy ourselves time." Cala Denovi barked orders from the auxiliary bridge, coordinating with the rest of the fleet. "All ships, break formation. Use the debris fields to hide your signatures. We're not going to fight this head-on. We need to keep them guessing." The rest of the human fleet scattered, weaving between asteroids, using every piece of wreckage from past battles as cover. The Zorthians tried to target them, but their fire was erratic, unable to lock onto the rapidly moving ships. However, the dreadnought had something else in mind. Its sheer size allowed it to maintain focus, even against multiple targets. "Vash, we need a plan," Cala shouted over the comms. "They'll keep hitting us like this until we're gone." Vash's mind was a blur, calculating the possible moves. If the Zithar could keep firing with its devastating main cannons, they'd be decimated in minutes. But there was one option. One crazy, impossible option. "All ships, hold your positions," Vash commanded, his voice unyielding. "We're going. In, full speed ahead." On Zephyr, Empress Vera watched the chaos unfold from her private command center. The humans were relentless, but they hadn't breached the dreadnought's defenses yet. "Let them come," she said coldly, her voice laced with disdain. "The Zithar class is impervious. They're no match for the might of the Empire." But even as she spoke, the tremors of the battle reverberated through her command deck. Something had changed. "General Hakkar," she said, turning to her second-in-command. "What are they doing?" Hakkar's eyes widened. They're charging, right for us. They've turned directly into the fire." "Impossible," Vera spat. "No one would be foolish enough to engage us directly at this range." But Vash was not following the rules of warfare. Humanity didn't need to win by strength. They won by ingenuity. And in this case, they were going to make the Zorthians face their own arrogance. As the human fleet plunged forward, Vash's ship led the charge. The Zithar-class dreadnought's main guns were already charging again, and it was all Vash's team could do to stay ahead of the blast radius. With every ounce of energy, their ships tore through space, diving straight into the line of fire. Just as the next blast was about to fire, Vash gave the order. "Now, activate the quantum disruptor!" A pulse of energy rippled outward, disrupting the Zythar's targeting systems. At the last possible moment, the massive cannon fired, but it missed. "Direct hit! We're in range!" shouted the tactical officer. "All ships, fire at will!" Human ships unleashed a barrage of missiles, laser fire, and EMP pulses, hammering into the dreadnought's shields. The Zythar-class dreadnought staggered under the pressure, its energy reserves plummeting. Vash's face was tight with focus, but his heart raced as he gave the next order. "Target their core systems! Disable them!" Empress Vera's face turned, pale as the damage reports flooded in. "No, this cannot be happening!" Her hand slammed onto the console. "Counterattack. Do everything you can. Stop them." But it was too late. The humans had broken through the Zythar's defenses. Their ships launched one final strike, a perfectly timed, coordinated series of precision shots aimed at the dreadnoughts. Core. The ship trembled, then buckled under the assault. The Zythar-class dreadnought exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The blast sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The destruction of the Zythar class opened a path directly to Zyphor, the heart of the Empire. The capital was exposed, but just as humanity thought they had won, a chilling message blared across the comms. "You think this is over? You are wrong. We are the Zorthian Empire. We do not fall." The voice was cold, as emotionless as a machine, and in the distance, a massive fleet emerged from hyperspace, an armada larger than anything the humans had ever faced. 47 minutes to collapse. The Zorthian Empire had always believed in its invincibility. For millennia, it had ruled the galaxy with unmatched power, its dreadnoughts and fleets striking fear into every species that dared oppose them. But humanity, with nothing but grit and ingenuity, had brought it to its knees. Now, as their final armada emerged from hyperspace, the humans faced their greatest challenge yet. Vash Cormac stood at the heart of the command room, his eyes fixed on the massive IS fleet now gathering on the tactical display. The Zorthians had regrouped faster than he had anticipated. The moment they had destroyed the Zythar-class dreadnought, a new wave of ships had appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. Larger, more numerous, and with weapons powerful enough to wipe out humanity's last remaining ships in minutes. "Everyone stay calm," Vash said, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts racing through his mind. "We've faced worse than this. We've faced the impossible, and we've won." Kala Denovi moved next to him, scanning the display, her brow furrowed as she assessed the incoming threat. "They've got at least 3 full fleets coming at us. If we don't get creative, we're done." Vash nodded, his eyes narrowing. The Zorthians were bringing everything they had left, and this wasn't going to be an easy fight. But there was one thing they had in their favor: time. The Zorthian fleets would be at full strength in under an hour, but humanity had 47 minutes. To act before they could launch a final decisive attack on Zyphor, it was all or nothing. "We're going to make sure they never get to launch their attack," Vash said with determination. "Kala, assemble a strike team. I need you to infiltrate the command center of their fleet and plant a virus in their navigation systems. We'll use their own fleet against them." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Zorthian capital, Empress Vera watched the new armada form up around Zyphor. Her fingers clenched into fists as she stared at the holographic display. "You think this is a victory?" she hissed. "We have crushed countless species. We have obliterated worlds. You, humans, are nothing." General Hakar, standing behind her, could see the cold rage in her eyes. "Your Majesty," he said, trying to keep his composure. "The human fleets are much smaller, but they are extremely dangerous. We cannot underestimate them. They are already dead," Vera said, her voice low. "Launch the fleet. We'll end this now." The Zorthian fleet's final assault would begin in 47 minutes, less time than it would take to launch a single strike on Zyphor itself. Vash and his team prepared for their assault. The human fleet had only a small window of time to execute their mission. The plan was simple, but daring. The Zorthian fleet had advanced AI systems that controlled most of their movements. But Vash knew a way to exploit their one weakness, their overconfidence in their technology. If they could disable the Zorthians' central command and disrupt their fleet coordination, the incoming armada would be rendered useless. "Remember, we don't have much time," Vash said as he watched his team suit up. "In and out. We'll hit the Zorthian command ship, install the virus, and get the hell out before they realize what happened." Kala led the strike team aboard the stealth shuttle, cutting through the chaos of space. The Zorthian fleets were assembling in the distance, but the human team was focused only on their objective, penetrating the heart of the Zorthian war machine. The shuttle's systems were cloaked, but that didn't mean they were invisible. Kala held her breath as they approached the Zorthian flagship, a massive behemoth bristling with weapons. One wrong move, and they'd be reduced to space debris in seconds. "We're in position," Kala said, her voice steady as she gestured to the team. "Prepare for boarding." Inside the Zorthian flagship, the atmosphere was tense. The high-ranking officers were busy preparing their final offensive, unaware that humanity was about to deliver the last blow to their empire. But then the alarms blared, shattering the silence. "What is this?" one of the officers shouted as the command center's display flickered. "Our navigation systems are compromised." General Hakar spun around, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What's happening? How are they accessing our systems?" The Zorthian technicians scrambled, but it was too late. The virus had been planted, and the fleet's central command was now under human control. They could no longer communicate effectively. Their ships were scattered and confused. The tide was about to turn. Kala's team moved swiftly through the Zorthian command ship, taking out guards with precision. Their mission was nearing completion, but they could feel the weight of the clock bearing down on them. They had 47 minutes to cause enough chaos to ensure humanity's victory. As the last guard fell, Kala tapped into the main system. "We've got control. The Zorthian fleets are ours." Back in the human fleet, the Zorthian ships began to falter. Their fleet's communications were down, their formation broken. The human ships, now coordinated, pounced on the isolated vessels. "Strike now!" Vash shouted over the comms. "We have them on the run. Take out their flagship and the rest will fall." The human ships launched a brutal counteroffensive, targeting key weaknesses in the Zorthian ships. Every shot, every strike was methodical, focused on making the most of this fragile moment. Empress Vera's anger reached its peak as she watched her forces crumble before her eyes. Her entire empire was slipping away in real time. "No!" she screamed. "We cannot lose! We will not fall to these insects!" But her voice was lost in the roar of destruction. The humans had done what they'd promised. They had turned the Zorthian Empire's own arrogance and reliance on technology against them. With 47 minutes left on the clock, the Zorthian Empire was in full retreat, its flagship on the brink of collapse. But before the final blow could be struck, a chilling transmission blared across all frequencies. "This is not the end. It is the beginning of something much darker. The Zorthian Empire is no more, but a far greater force is watching. A new fleet, one unlike anything humanity had ever faced, appeared on the horizon." This was not the end of the war. It was just the beginning of something far more terrifying. The human rebellion has triumphed against all odds, but a new, unknown threat looms on the horizon, and the fight is far from over. The Zorthian Empire may have fallen, but the universe is far from safe. You just saw humanity rise against impossible odds, but the fight's not over. The galaxy is still full of threats, and it's up to you to keep this story alive. If you love this epic battle, hit that like button, comment, Humanity FK yeah, and don't forget to subscribe. Together we rise. We endure. Until next time, stay ready for what's next.